The stack of checks hit the mahogany desk with a sound like a gunshot, 96 pieces of paper fanning across the polished surface and sliding onto the floor in a slow, deliberate cascade. Maya Reeves stood over the desk with her hand still flat against the wood, breathing hard, her heels planted wide on the 38th floor of a building that smelled like money and secrets. Across from her, Junho Baek did not flinch. He set down his pen with the same unhurried precision he did everything and looked up at her the way a man looks at whether he has already decided not to worry about. "You want to explain this," he said. It was not a question. "I want you to explain it," Maya said. 96 checks, Mr. Beck. 96 vendors who do not exist. 96 invoices for consulting services performed by companies with no employees, no offices, and no phone numbers that connect to anything but a shell in the Caymans. I have been your executive assistant for 14 months. I know what a real vendor looks like. These are not that. For 3 years, Maya had built her professional life inside rooms like this one, first as a forensic accountant's assistant downtown, now as the woman who kept Junho Baek's calendar, his correspondence, and apparently, without ever meaning to, his secrets. She had taken the job at Beck Holdings because the salary let her finally move her mother out of a walk-up in Flatbush and into somewhere with an elevator. She had told herself the whispers about the company were just competitors being petty. She had told herself a lot of things. Junho rose from his chair, and the room seemed to organize itself around the movement, the way certain men make furniture look like it was always arranged to frame them. He was tall in a way that photographs failed to capture, his charcoal suit cut so precisely it read less like clothing and more like architecture. A thin white scar interrupted his left eyebrow, the only imperfection on an otherwise unreadable face. When he circled the desk toward her, Maya did not step back, and something flickered behind his dark eyes that might have been surprise. "Most people who find something like this on my desk," he said, "do not bring it to me directly. They take a photograph, and they disappear. Or they do not get the chance to disappear." Is that a threat? It is an observation. He picked up one of the checks from the floor, turned it over between two fingers like he was reading a language only he understood. "You're still standing here. That tells me something. It tells you I want an answer. Careful, Ms. Reeves. Curiosity has a shorter life expectancy in this building than you would like to believe." Maya's pulse was a drumline in her throat, but she kept her voice level, because level was the only weapon she had ever needed in rooms full of men who assumed a soft voice meant a soft spine. "Then maybe you should tell me what I am curious about before I have to find out on my own." Junho studied her for a long moment, long enough that the silence between them stopped being empty and started being something else entirely, something with weight and temperature. Then he said her name for the first time that morning, and it landed differently than it ever had in 14 months of meetings and memos. "Maya." Just that. No honorific, no Ms. Reeves, no distance. "Sit down. I will tell you exactly what those checks are, and then you are going to have to decide something about your life very quickly." She sat because there are moments a person can feel closing around them like a door, and she understood this was one of them. He told her that Beck Holdings, on paper a real estate and logistics conglomerate with offices in 3 cities, was also the financial spine of an organization that controlled shipping routes from Busan to Los Angeles, an organization his grandfather had built from nothing and his father had nearly lost to a rival family before dying with a bullet in a lung. The 96 checks were not fraud in the way she understood fraud. They were payment to soldiers, lieutenants, and informants who could never appear on a legitimate payroll, laundered through shell companies to keep the empire breathing. He told her because, he said, a woman sharp enough to catch what 3 previous assistants and 1 outside auditor had missed deserved the truth instead of a lie that would only buy him a few more weeks before she found the real one anyway. "You could have me killed for what I just told you," she said, and was proud that her voice did not shake when she said it. "I could." His expression did not change. "I am choosing not to." "Why?" "I have not decided yet," he said. "Ask me again in a week." That should have terrified her more than it did. Instead, something colder and more practical rose in her chest, the same instinct that had once made her walk into a burning apartment building to pull her downstairs neighbor's dog from a 3rd-floor window while the fire department was still 4 minutes out. She did not scare easily. She scared slowly, and by the time fear caught up to her, she had usually already done the dangerous thing. "If I stay," she said, "I want to know what I am staying inside of. All of it. Not the version you give clients." Something that was almost respect moved across his face. "Careful what you ask for, Maya. Men who have asked me that question have regretted the answer. I did not ask if I would regret it. I asked if you would tell me." He looked at her for a long moment, and then, for the first time since she had walked into his office 9 minutes earlier, Jun-ho Baek almost smiled. The elevator ride down that evening lasted 4 minutes and felt like an hour. Maya stood with her back against brushed steel, watching the floor numbers fall, replaying every conversation she had ever had with him for a version of the truth she had missed. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. But underneath the fear was something sharper, a kind of electricity she recognized from the moment she had held her palm flat against his desk and refused to look away first. Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the lobby. A text from a number she did not recognize. "Do not go home tonight. Someone was asking about you in the parking garage." She stood very still under the marble archway of the lobby, the evening crowd moving around her like water around a stone, and understood that whatever door had opened in that office an hour ago had already closed behind her. Maya did not go home. She went to a diner 2 blocks from the office, the kind of place with sticky menus and a waitress who called everyone honey, and she sat in a corner booth with her back to the wall the way her uncle, a retired detective, had taught her to sit in any room she did not fully trust. She ordered coffee she did not drink and watched the door. He found her there 40 minutes later, without a jacket, sleeves rolled to his forearms in a way that made him look less like the man who ran an empire and more like someone who had been running, period. 2 men Maya did not recognize took the booth by the entrance, and a third stood outside, near a black car with its engine idling. "How did you know I was here?" she asked. "I did not." Jun-ho slid into the seat across from her. "I had someone follow you the moment you left the building. After what happened in the garage, I was not willing to guess." "You had someone follow me. I had someone protect you. There is a difference, and tonight it is the only reason you are still drinking bad coffee instead of being a problem someone else has already solved." Maya's hands went still around the cup. "Who was in the garage?" "A man named Sang-min Cho works for a rival organization out of Koreatown in Los Angeles. His family has wanted a piece of my shipping routes for 6 years and has never had the leverage to force the conversation." Jun-ho's jaw tightened, the first crack Maya had seen in his composure since she had known him. "This morning you found the checks. By this afternoon, someone inside my own organization told Cho's people that my assistant knows things she should not know. That means I have a leak, and it means you are now a target whether you agreed to be one or not. So this is my fault."
"No."
The word came fast, harder than anything he had said all day. "This is the fault of whoever decided your safety was a bargaining chip. I intend to find that person, and I intend for the conversation we have to be very short." Something about the certainty in his voice, the flat, absolute calm of a man describing violence the way other men described weather, should have sent Maya running for the nearest police precinct. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, elbows on the table, studying the scar over his eyebrow like it might tell her something the rest of his face refused to. "You said I would have to decide something about my life very quickly," she said. "I think tonight decided it for me. Meaning I am not going home to an apartment where someone already knows my address. Meaning I want protection, not because I am asking you for anything but because I am not stupid enough to pretend I can handle a man named Cho on my own. And meaning that once this is over, I still want the truth. All of it. You do not get to protect me and lie to me at the same time." Jun-ho studied her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted, some calculation resolving itself behind his eyes. "You negotiate like someone who has done this before." "I negotiate like someone who grew up watching her mother get talked down to by every landlord, every boss, every man who thought soft-spoken meant pushover. I learned early that you do not ask for what you deserve. You state it." For the second time that day, Jun-ho Baek almost smiled. "Come with me," he said, and stood and offered his hand across the table, and Maya looked at it for exactly 1 second before she took it. The building he took her to that night was not the skyscraper. It was a townhouse in a quiet part of the city with no company logo anywhere in sight, guarded by two men who nodded at Junho and did not look twice at Maya, as though her presence beside him had already been decided somewhere she had not been consulted. Inside, the space was startlingly plain for a man who ran an empire in silk suits, all clean lines and low light, more monastery than mansion. "You live here," Maya said. "I sleep here. Living is a different verb." He gestured toward a room down the hall. "You will stay in the guest room until we understand how deep the leak goes. There are men outside at all times. You are not a prisoner. You are a target, and there is a difference in how I intend to treat you." "How considerate," she said, but there was no real edge in it, and they both seemed to notice. That night, Maya lay awake in an unfamiliar bed listening to unfamiliar sounds, and somewhere past midnight, unable to sleep, she wandered down to the kitchen and found Junho sitting alone at the counter with a glass of something amber he had not touched in 20 minutes, staring at nothing. "You should be asleep," he said without turning around. "So should you. I do not sleep well in this house. Too much thinking room." She sat across from him, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked when he was choosing his next words carefully. "Tell me about the scar," she said. His hand moved unconsciously to the thin white line through his eyebrow. "A woman named Hannah," he said finally. "She worked for me 11 years ago. Not romantically. She ran logistics out of the Busan office, and she was the only person in this organization who ever told me when I was making a mistake instead of telling me what I wanted to hear. A rival faction took her to get to me. I was 3 hours too slow finding her. The scar is from the night I found the men who did it, not from the night they took her." The kitchen went very quiet. "I am sorry," Maya said, and meant it. "I do not tell people that story. I am not entirely sure why I told you." His eyes met hers across the counter, and for once there was nothing calculated in them, only something raw and unguarded that made Maya's chest ache in a way she was not prepared for. "You should be more afraid of me than you are." "Maybe I am afraid," she said. "I am also still sitting here." "Careful, Maya," he said low, almost a warning to himself as much as to her. "I am not a man who is good at wanting things quietly. I did not ask you to be quiet about it." The air between them went taut, charged, the kind of silence that has a pulse. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. And then Junho set down his glass, untouched, and said her name one more time, softer than before, and the moment stretched until Maya finally stood, because staying any longer in that kitchen would have meant crossing a line she was not ready to cross on the first night. Not yet. Not like this. "Good night, Junho," she said, and left him alone with his glass and his ghosts, and neither of them slept much at all. The next morning began with gunfire. Maya woke to the sound of shattering glass on the ground floor and was moving before she was fully conscious of moving, rolling off the bed and onto the floor the way every instinct her uncle had ever drilled into her demanded. She heard shouting in 2 languages, the heavy percussion of automatic weapons, footsteps pounding up the staircase. The bedroom door burst open, and it was Junho, no jacket, blood on his knuckles that was not his own, a pistol in his right hand held with the ease of a man who had held one 1,000 times before. "Stay behind me," he said, and there was nothing gentle in his voice now, only steel. "I am not going to be dead weight," Maya snapped, and grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the nightstand because it was the only thing within reach that could be turned into a weapon. They moved down the back stairwell together, Junho covering the angles with the fluid, economical violence of someone for whom this was not a special occasion but a language he had been speaking his whole life. 2 men came around the corner of the hallway below, and Junho put both of them down before Maya had time to process they were there. 2 shots, no wasted motion, and then he was pulling her past the bodies toward the kitchen exit. A 3rd man stepped out from behind the pantry door with a gun already raised at Junho's back, and Maya did not think. She swung the lamp with everything her arm had and caught him across the temple hard enough that he staggered, giving Junho the half-second he needed to turn and finish it. For a moment they simply stood there in the wreckage of the kitchen, both breathing hard, and Junho looked at her, at the lamp still clenched in her white-knuckled hand, and something in his face cracked open entirely. "You just saved my life," he said, like he could not quite believe the sentence as he said it. "Don't sound so surprised," Maya said, and her voice shook now that the adrenaline had somewhere to go. "I told you I was not dead weight." Sirens rose somewhere in the distance, and Junho's men were already moving through the house clearing the remaining threats, and in the chaos of it, in the smoke and the ringing silence after gunfire, he reached out and pressed his palm briefly against the side of her face, just for a second, just long enough to say something neither of them had words for yet. "We need to move," he said instead, and the moment folded itself away, but neither of them forgot it happened. They spent that day in a second safe house, this one further from a city, surrounded by trees instead of streets, and it was there, watching Junho on the phone with his lieutenants in a voice colder and harder than she had heard him use before, that Maya understood the full shape of the man she had chosen to stay beside. He gave an order that ended with a name she recognized from the shell company documents, and something in his tone told her clearly that the man attached to that name would not be attending any more meetings, ever. When he hung up, she was waiting in the doorway. Was that the leak? Yes. He did not elaborate, and she did not ask him to. Some truths, she was learning, did not need narration to be understood. "I should tell you," Maya said, "that I went through the files on your desk last night while you were asleep. I know you probably have cameras. I am not going to pretend I did not do it." For a moment Junho looked genuinely startled, an expression she had not seen on him before. "What did you find?" "Enough to know that Cho is not just trying to take your shipping routes. He is trying to marry into legitimacy. There is a wedding on the calendar 3 weeks from now, his daughter to a city councilman's son, and half the guest list is people who launder his money through construction permits. If that wedding happens clean, he gets political cover this city has never given his family before." Junho's expression sharpened into something Maya recognized, the look of a man recalculating an entire war based on new intelligence. "How did you find that?" "I used to be a forensic accountant's assistant before I worked for you. Following money through paperwork is the only superpower I have ever had." She crossed her arms. "If you want to hit him where it actually hurts, it is not a warehouse or a shipment. It is that wedding." He looked at her for a long, unreadable moment, and then he laughed, once, low and surprised, a sound she had never heard from him before. "You are the most dangerous person in this house, and you have never fired a gun in your life. I have thrown a lamp at a man's head. I think that counts for something." "It counts for quite a lot," he said, and the warmth in his voice was new and unguarded, and Maya felt something in her chest loosen that had been tight since the moment 96 checks hit his desk. That night, in the second safe house, standing on a balcony overlooking dark trees while his men patrolled below, Junho found her wrapped in a blanket against the cold and stood beside her without speaking for a long time. "I told myself keeping you close was strategy," he said finally. "Protecting a witness. Managing a liability. I have told myself a great many convenient lies in my life, Maya, and that one did not survive the second night." "What is the truth, then?" "The truth is that you are the first person in 11 years who has looked at everything I am and did not flinch, did not run, and did not try to use it. I do not know what to do with that. I am not certain I deserve it." "Nobody asked you whether you deserved it," Maya said quietly. "I am not staying because I think you are a good man, Junho. I am staying because you are an honest one, in your own terrible way, and because when the room fills with gunfire you put your body between me and the door without thinking twice. That means something. I am done pretending it does not." He turned to face her fully then, and the space between them closed the way gravity closes distance, inevitable and unhurried, until his hand came up to rest against her jaw, careful, like she was something he was still afraid of breaking despite everything she had already survived beside him. "If I do this," he said, "there is no version of it that is uncomplicated. My world does not let go of people. Not enemies. Not allies. Not the people I care about most." "I did not ask for uncomplicated," Maya said. "I asked for honest." He kissed her then, and it was not gentle exactly. It carried the full weight of 11 years of a man who had decided somewhere along the way that wanting things was a weakness he could not afford, finally letting the weakness win. Maya kissed him back with both hands fisted in the front of his shirt, and when they finally broke apart, breathless, the cold night air did nothing to cool either of them down. "We still have to survive the next 3 weeks," she said against his jaw. "Then we survive them," he said. "Together this time. Not you behind me, beside me." The plan Maya built over the following 2 weeks was, by her own admission, more accounting than war. She spent nights at a borrowed desk with 3 laptops and a legal pad, cross-referencing permit filings, campaign donations, and shell company registrations until she had built a paper trail connecting Sang-min Cho's laundered construction money directly to the councilman whose son was about to marry Cho's daughter. It was not the kind of weapon Junho's world usually used, but it was, she argued, the kind that could not be shot back at. "If this goes public 3 days before the wedding," she told him, spreading printouts across his desk in the skyscraper office where all of this had started, "the councilman pulls out, the political cover collapses, and Cho's entire legitimacy plan dies before it starts. No bullets. No martyrs. Just paperwork. And if he retaliates before we get there, then that is where your men come in," Maya said. "I build the trap. You guard the door." Junho studied the papers, then studied her, something like awe moving behind his dark eyes. 11 years in this business," he said, "and no one has ever suggested we win a war with spreadsheets." 11 years and no one hired an accountant, Maya said. "Your mistake, not mine." He caught her wrist as she reached for another folder, drew her closer, close enough that she could count the flecks of gold in his eyes she had never noticed before. "I meant what I said on the balcony," he said quietly. "This is not strategy anymore." "I know," Maya said. "It was not strategy for me either. Not since the second I hit your desk with 96 checks and you did not have me thrown out of the building." "I considered it," he admitted, the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "For about 4 seconds. Only 4. "You are very convincing," he said, and kissed her again, slower this time, unhurried, like a man finally allowing himself something he had spent years pretending he did not want. 3 days before the wedding, Sang-min Cho found out about the documents. Maya learned this the way she learned most dangerous things now, from the sudden silence in a room full of Junho's lieutenants and the particular stillness that came over him when he read a message on his phone without saying anything for nearly a full minute. "He knows," Junho said finally. "He has taken out an insurance policy. 2 of his men are watching your mother's building in Flatbush." The floor seemed to tilt under Maya's feet. "My mother has nothing to do with this." "I know." His hand found hers, steady, grounding. "Which is exactly why I already have 4 men outside her building and a car ready to move her the moment we say the word. He wants you to panic, Maya. He wants you to make a mistake. We are not going to give him one." "I want to see her moved myself," Maya said. "I am not sending someone else to do that. Not for this." Junho hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Then we do it together." "But Maya, listen to me. If we walk into Flatbush and Cho's men are watching, this stops being paperwork. This becomes exactly the kind of danger I promised myself I would keep away from you." "You already tried to keep me away from your world once," Maya said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "It found me anyway. I would rather walk into danger beside you than wait somewhere safe wondering if you are alive. I made that choice on the balcony. I am not unmaking it now because it got harder." Something fierce and proud moved across his face, and he pulled her into him, one hand cradling the back of her head, and for a moment neither of them said anything at all, because there was nothing left to negotiate. They moved on Flatbush an hour before dawn, 3 cars, 6 men, and Maya in the middle vehicle with a photograph of her mother's building memorized down to the fire escape. Cho's men were exactly where Junho's intelligence had placed them, a dark sedan parked across the street with its engine idling, 2 silhouettes visible through the windshield. Junho's men moved first, fast and quiet, and Maya was out of the car and through the lobby door before anyone could stop her, taking the stairs 2 at a time to her mother's 3rd-floor apartment. Her mother opened the door already dressed, already packing a bag, because Maya had called ahead and her mother, who had survived worse neighborhoods than this one, did not waste time arguing with urgency. "Who is the man downstairs telling everyone to hurry?" her mother asked as they moved down the stairwell together, Maya's hand firm on the small suitcase, her mother's hand firm on Maya's arm.
His name is Junho, Maya said.
It is a very long story, and I promise to tell you all of it once we are somewhere safe. Is he the reason you have not called me back in 4 days?
Yes.
Is he treating you right? Maya thought of the balcony, of the kitchen, of a hand pressed briefly against her cheek in the smoke after gunfire.
Yes, she said. He is.
Then I suppose I will reserve judgment until I meet him properly, her mother said, in the particular tone of a woman who had raised a daughter tough enough to survive whatever this turned out to be, and Maya almost laughed despite everything, right up until they hit the lobby and found Junho standing over one of Cho's men, who was on his knees on the tile with his hands zip-tied behind his back. He was reaching for something in his jacket. Junho said simply, by way of explanation, and Maya did not ask further questions because some things, in this new life she had chosen, did not require narration to be understood. Cho's man on his knees looked up at Maya with something between fear and fury. You have no idea what you have started, he said. I have a very good idea, Maya said. I built the file myself. They got her mother into the second car and moving toward a safe house within 11 minutes, and it was only once the convoy was clear of Flatbush that Junho allowed himself to exhale, one long breath, his shoulders dropping fractionally in a way Maya had never seen from him before. That is the second time in 2 weeks you have run directly into danger instead of away from it, he said low, only for her. You keep expecting me to be the kind of woman who waits in a safe room, Maya said. I do not think I have ever been that woman. Not once in my life. I am beginning to understand that, Junho said, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like relief, like a man who had spent years bracing for softness and had instead found something with a spine of its own, something that did not need protecting so much as it needed standing beside. The wedding, when it finally arrived, unfolded exactly the way Maya had engineered it to. The documents reached 3 investigative reporters and 1 district attorney's office 48 hours before the ceremony, timed precisely enough that the councilman's team had no room to control the narrative before it broke wide open on every local news outlet in the city. The councilman withdrew his son from the wedding party publicly, citing family concerns, and the political cover that was supposed to launder Sang-min Cho's entire operation collapsed in a single news cycle. But Cho did not go quietly. He came to the skyscraper himself, 2 days after the wedding fell apart, walking into the lobby with 4 men and a fury that had nowhere left to go except directly at the source of his humiliation. Maya was in the executive office finishing a report when the alarm went active. A soft chime she had learned in 2 weeks meant the building's lowest floor had been breached by someone who was not supposed to be there. Stay here, Junho said, already moving toward the door. Already the cold, precise man she had first met with 96 checks scattered between them. No, Maya said, and the words stopped him at the threshold. You do not get to protect me by leaving me in a room by myself while you walk into a man who wants you dead. I did not build that file so you could go die proving a point. We finish this together, or we do not finish it at all. He looked at her for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes, and then, for the first time since she had known him, Junho Baek did not argue. Stay close, he said instead. Do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. That is not me controlling you. That is me trusting you to trust me. Deal, Maya said, and picked up the heavy glass paperweight from his desk, because old habits, she had learned, were worth keeping. They met Cho on the 22nd floor, where his men had cornered 2 of Junho's guards near the elevator bank. Cho himself stood in the center of the hallway in a suit that had clearly been tailored for a wedding that no longer existed, his face rearranged by 2 weeks of humiliation into something raw and dangerous. You destroyed my daughter's wedding, Cho said, his voice shaking with a fury that had clearly been building since the story broke. You destroyed everything I built to get my family out of the shadows. You tried to build it on my organization's shipping routes and a councilman's son, Junho said, his voice flat, final. You destroyed it yourself the moment you decided legitimacy was worth threatening an innocent woman's mother to get. Cho's eyes moved to Maya, and something ugly settled into his expression. The accountant, he said. You're the one who built the file. I am, Maya said, meeting his eyes without flinching, the paperweight heavy and cold in her hand. And I would build it again tomorrow. Cho moved fast for a man his age, reaching for the weapon at his hip, but Junho was faster, closing the distance in 2 strides and driving Cho into the wall hard enough to crack the plaster, disarming him with the same economical violence Maya had watched him use once before. No wasted motion, no hesitation. One of Cho's remaining men lunged toward Maya from the side, and she did not wait to be saved. She swung the paperweight with everything her arm had, catching him across the jaw and sending him sprawling, and by the time Junho's guards moved in to finish clearing the hallway, it was over almost as quickly as it had started. Junho held Cho pinned against the wall, forearm across his throat, and for a moment Maya watched something dark and final move behind his eyes, the calculation of a man deciding whether tonight was the night his enemy stopped breathing permanently. Junho, Maya said quietly, and he looked at her, and whatever war was happening behind his expression paused. Not like this. Not with an audience of reporters 2 blocks away already asking questions about the wedding. Let the system finish what the paperwork started. Let him lose everything slowly, in public, the way he tried to build it. For a long moment Junho did not move, and then, slowly, he eased the pressure on Cho's throat, stepping back, straightening his jacket with the same unhurried precision he brought to everything. You are fortunate, he told Cho, that the woman you tried to threaten has a better sense of justice than I do. Cho was arrested 6 days later, the shell company documents forming the backbone of a federal case that unraveled 2 decades of laundered construction money across 3 boroughs. It was not the ending Junho's world usually wrote for its enemies, but it was, Maya told him quietly that night, the kind of ending that would haunt a proud man far longer than a bullet ever could. They stood together on the same balcony where he had first kissed her, weeks now behind them, the city spread out below in 1,000 small lights that no longer felt like a threat so much as a view. I have spent 11 years running an organization that survives by never being vulnerable, Junho said, his hand finding hers on the railing. You walked into my office with 96 checks and made me vulnerable in 9 minutes. I did not make you anything, Maya said. I just refused to look away first. You did the rest yourself. I want you to stay, he said, and there was nothing calculated in the words now, no strategy, no negotiation, only a man saying a true thing out loud for what might have been the first time in over a decade. Not as my assistant. Not as a witness I am protecting. I want you to stay because I do not know how to imagine the rest of my life without you standing beside me instead of behind me. Maya turned to face him fully, the city lights catching the gold in his eyes, and thought about 96 checks and a scar over an eyebrow and a lamp swung hard enough to save a man's life and a mother safely tucked into a new apartment 2 boroughs over with an elevator and a doorman who would never let anyone up without calling first. I already decided to stay, she said. I decided it on the balcony the first time. I've just been waiting for you to catch up. He laughed, low and genuine, a sound she had learned to treasure because it came so rarely and cost him so much to give. Then I suppose, he said, I am now officially the last one to arrive at his own conclusion. Officially, Maya agreed and let him pull her in, and did not think once about checks or shell companies or a rival named Cho now facing a federal courtroom, only about the specific, certain weight of a man who had finally stopped protecting himself from the one thing that might actually save him. If you loved watching Maya turn 96 fraudulent checks into the downfall of an entire criminal empire, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit hardest, whether it was the lamp, the balcony, or the paperwork that beat a war. And if you want more stories where love is dangerous and the women are never the ones who need saving, hit that like button and stay close, because the next story is already waiting.